I'd like to welcome you to our meeting number 5, by number 4 of the General Plan Advisory Committee. And we thank you all for your diligence in continuing to come out and support this effort we needed here in the city. So with that being said, what am I supposed to say after this? Is it a welcome, roll call? Oh, we usually, let's do the pledge. Can't believe it's in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start on the end, and if you could just go around and say your name, then I'll just check it off. Look up and look down, look up and look down. Is that
You ready? Good evening, Crystal Alexander.
Yes, Crystal.
William Grant, good afternoon.
Good evening, Hervé Gordon.
Hello, Cheryl Gwynn.
Good afternoon, William Bettis.
Kip Rudd.
Okay. Pat Douglas.
Jason Scott.
Gregory Sneed.
And of course,
Sean.
okay, Sean, I think there's no
Marvin Brumby.
Okay,
Cheryl Salazar.
okay.
Renika Brooks.
Corey Witter.
And Corey.
Hi, Jonathan Netflix.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your indulgence this evening, everyone. So, that's not the agenda. The agenda, I think we're starting with a summary of community outreach, and that would be none other than Ms. Brooks.
Are there some coming, or you wanna?
We're gonna, I think we'll start, but if I could ask the city staff just to introduce our new GPAC member.
Yeah, I would love to, yeah. So I wanna, it is our pleasure to introduce Brian Grant, who was recently appointed by Councilwoman Falk, representing District 4. We had the opportunity to meet with him. It seemed like it was so long ago, but it was yesterday. To get him brought up to speed on all the good work that this GPAC has done. So we want to welcome Brian Grant to the group.
Okay,
Thank you for
great.
having me.
Welcome. Welcome, Brian.
And was there someone else?
No?
Okay, that's the only place that was,
Jonathan.
All right.
yeah.
Ready to get going? Let's do it. Okay, I'm going to start us off this evening with some introductory remarks and some larger context and background information. And then my colleague Corey is going to walk us through the real meat of our discussion, the focus area recommendations. But before we get into the details, I want to start with just a reminder of where we are in our project schedule. So we're nearing a significant milestone that we've been working towards together and with the broader community since July, and that is the draft update to the land use plan. So we're still in that first bar there of phase 2, but we are hoping to be able to complete that phase of work over the next few months and move into the next elements of the work program, which are going to be moving forward in parallel. And that'll be development of the policies for the general plan elements, and at the same time, the environmental impact report and the technical studies associated with that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. I think as kind of good practice, it's important to remind everyone about our foundation that was established in the first phase of work based on community engagement. That is the vision statement and guiding principles. I'm not going to read all of these out. You have, I think, the full vision statement in your materials, your binders. But I think it's good for us to always keep this in mind as kind of our guiding light in terms of the objectives, the overall vision that has been established for where Inglewood is headed the next level, and where the materials that we're developing are designed to encourage and support reaching these objectives. I do want to pause for a moment just on the guiding principles that I think are most relevant to the conversations we've been having about the land use plan. And those are the ones associated with growth and development, and just point out some of the elements here that I think are gonna hopefully be resonant with you in thinking about the land use plan and some of the concepts that have been developed. These will also be enforced and elaborated on in the policies in the land use element, which is part of our next phase of work. But I just want to call out some of the important components here. The first bullet point addresses focusing growth and development within commercial corridors. As you know, a lot of our discussions around focus areas, identification of focus areas, has been oriented around corridors, the city's commercial corridors. There's a focus here on supporting downtown Inglewood revitalization. There's a focus on maintaining the vitality of active economic areas, intensifying and diversifying development adjacent to transit, which we'll come back to and have been looking at in a few of our focus areas. Improving and enhancing existing commercial centers, again, something that's represented in a couple of, or a few of our focus areas. Promoting the reuse of obsolete and underutilized properties, again, focused on commercial areas, and then protecting and expanding housing opportunities for all ages and household types. So just a reminder here that our discussions tonight are going to remain focused on the land use element, key component of the land use element. There are several other updates or several other elements to the general plan that we're looking forward to getting into discussion with you and the general public about during our next phase of work. And then another kind of reminder here about where we've been, the road we've been traveling, where we're heading. As we've talked about during our previous meetings on the land use plan, the plan is being updated in two parallel components. So our discussions at the GPAC meetings and with the broader public over the last 8 months have been focused on identifying preferred land uses in potential areas of change that support the vision and guiding principles. And that is that first component there. In parallel, as we've mentioned, the city staff and project team have been working on administrative or technical updates. And those two tracks are going to come together in a draft updated citywide land use plan that's going to be presented to the Planning Commission for their review, likely in May. We'll talk a little bit more about that timeline in a moment. And as part of bringing those two tracks together, what we're going to be doing is translating the land use concepts that we've been talking about into those updated land use category definitions or land use designations. And those technical designations will describe the intent of each land use type at a high level, including the types of uses allowed. And then they'll also include permitted residential density, which is, thinking back to, I think, our first meeting of the land use plan, or our second meeting overall, we talked about residential density is described as dwelling units per acre, and non-residential density is described as floor area ratio, or FAR. So the technical definitions for land uses will include both of those components according to state law. So coming back to our process here, our snake-like process for updating the land use plan over the last 8 months, as we've said. We are now nearing the final steps in that process, and after tonight, the intent is to present a recommendation for a citywide land use plan to the Planning Commission at their May meeting on May 6th, and to the City Council after that, which will likely be in June. The Planning Commission, City Council are not going to be asked to adopt the land use plan at that time. They're not going to be taking an official action. We are rather going to be asking them to approve the land use plan in concept and to initiate the environmental impact analysis based on that land use plan. And that analysis will look at things like vehicle miles traveled, good evening, the impact on air and water, all of the different categories that are legally required to be assessed in an EIR. The formal adoption of the land use plan will come with adoption of the full general plan itself, the full document, in 2027, which is actually next year, believe it or not. I'm saying that. So the objective tonight is to confirm your recommendations for appropriate land uses in each focus area. Remember from our prior discussions that the land use plan is intended to provide the general parameters to guide land use in the future if a private landowner seeks to develop their property. So what we're considering, it's not a redevelopment plan for the city. It does not propose new development of any particular site. It is the kind of guardrails if individual property owners choose to redevelop in the future. Yes?
Would you repeat that about the private landowner, what you just said?
Yes. The land use plan is intended to provide the general parameters to guide land use should a private property owner seeks to develop their property in the future. And those are, the land use plan is in place today, provides those parameters today for any property owner who seeks to develop their property. What we're trying to do is update it in a way that reflects the vision and the guiding principles that we've established for the future. So, as I mentioned, Corey is going to lead that review of each site in a few minutes. And I do want to emphasize, and I think this was communicated in the message that you received before the meeting, that for the majority of sites, the recommendations that are being presented for your consideration are not, do not show a change from what is allowed today, and or are consistent with public sentiment. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at the outreach outcomes of our engagement activities over the last, that took place largely in February, and the recommendation themselves, to compare those. What we, I think, attempted to do in the email message that went to you in advance was to point out those instances where there was some divergence between what was being recommended and what was, where public sentiment landed. And our expectation is that those instances, I think it was about a half dozen, are going to be the focus of our discussion tonight. We want to describe how we arrived at those recommendations and get your feedback. Yes?
Question. So the feedback that you had, because I know you guys are at a lot of the events, and you go to a lot of the events, one city, anything we have on Market Street, you guys are there. So these comments that you're going to be talking about tonight, are they a result of that feedback that you've gotten from those type people?
Yes. In fact, I'm going to talk about it in a moment.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think that's a good segue. Yes, those are what we shared with this group, what we've shared on the project website for the public to review is both the detailed results of all of the feedback that was collected during those activities and also a summary looking at the actual quantified results, and those will be in the package of information that was printed and distributed tonight, and also in the PDF that was sent with the email message that went out in advance.
I just want to chime in, and in response to your question, I think that's the most exciting part about where we are today, right? From the onset of this project, we were very intentional about making sure that this general plan update spoke in the voice of the people who were going to live it out, right? We said at the very beginning that we have an incredible consulting team, an incredible group of subject matter experts that can write a general plan and push it through pretty quickly, and you know, we can get the job done. But we've made every effort possible to get the feedback and input from community members, so that at the end of this product, we can say that this is what the community envisioned, right? And so, you know, I just wanted to say that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about where we are, what we're gonna be presenting to the Planning Commission, and then later the City Council as we move into the next phase of this project, because it embodies the vision that was spoken to in the YouTube video that we created at the very, very beginning of this process. And so I just wanted to say that I'm really excited about where we are and how we got here. And so again, a lot of that is a testament to you and our community's interest. I think that we've through our intentionality created a lot of interest. Of course, everybody loves the swag, and so I think the swag brings out people and they can walk around with t-shirts, sweatshirts, and things like that. But it's been an intentional process, and something that hasn't happened here in the city in a very, very long time. And so as we're beginning to move into the next level, we're finding that the community involvement, the community engagement is becoming more robust, and the product speaks for itself. So I think that
Yeah, and I think that kind of connects back to what I was saying previously, was that's why I think it's, you know, we think it's especially important to provide a rationale, an explanation, context for any place where a recommendation being presented to you diverges from what we heard from the public in any way. So,
So
those
we'll
are
see
connected.
hi everyone.
Hi.
The community's feedback, has it varied significantly from what we've been doing in brainstorming here necessarily, or not much?
No, I don't think so. It's, yeah, for the most part, it's been consistent with the alternatives, within the alternatives that were presented. Yeah. So, and let me just recap just quickly those activities that were held in February. The kickoff event was a community open house that was held at St. John Chrysostom School, easy for me to say, on Saturday, February 7th. Coinciding with that, we started an online survey which replicated the activities of the in-person event, and that online survey was available from the 7th through the end of February. Following the open house,
What school was that? I'm sorry.
St. John Chrysostom. You're gonna make me say it again. Right?
stay down with the
I was hoping I could just get away with it, mumbling it. Following that activity, as you indicated, the project team, city staff were at several citywide events. The Love and Basketball Block Party that was on Market Street, the Black History Celebration, I think that was also on Market Street. There was a booth at City Hall All of those held throughout February, were intended to get people online, filling out the online survey, which was the other means in which they could provide feedback if they weren't able to make it to the open house. And so at that open house event, we had somewhere around 80 attendees. We received 60 survey responses, and those again were what we heard during all of that feedback combined, which was more than 1,500 total individual responses, is summarized in a report that's in your printed materials for tonight that was sent out last week to you, and the raw data, pictures of all the boards, the raw data from and comments from the online survey are in a report that is on the website and was posted last week, and I believe there was a link to that in the email that went to you. So we've noted here some of the common themes that came out of that feedback. Those included preferences for mixed use alternatives. It included desire for more housing and more parks and green spaces, interest in supporting small businesses, and in adding more sit-down restaurants, grocery stores. There was lots of other opinions. These probably look familiar to you. This was, we heard a lot of similar types of comments throughout this process. So, what we heard really validated what the type of feedback we've been receiving for the past more than 2 years.
Isn't that long?
These things take time. We go deliberatively. One other item that I wanted to provide some context for, some additional context for, before handing it off to Corey and going through the sites themselves, is one common area of divergence that we are recommending for the land use alternatives for your consideration, and that impacts, I think, a few sites. And that divergence is that in areas where vertical mixed use was the preferred alternative, aside from Market Street downtown and the TOD areas, we are instead recommending horizontal mixed use. And I want to explain the reasons for that and what that means. What that means is that we're not requiring ground floor commercial uses. The reason for that is because in most areas, in most cities, including Inglewood, vertical mixed use has become economically unviable. And I want to explain that in a little bit more detail. Now first, I want to talk about some broader trends that are impacting the viability of retail in general and ground floor retail more specifically. And I want to start by thanking our newest member, Mr. Grant, who I think in a message that went out to all of you today, described some of the context better than I can, and better than I will this evening. The starting point is that nationwide, the supply of retail space exceeds the demand. That is, now, why is that? Primarily, it's because shopping habits have changed dramatically and permanently. Think about the places where you buy clothes or books or music, everyday items, and how that's changed over the last 5 years, 10 years. As a result of the emergence of online shopping and other changes, economic changes, retailers are shrinking the size of their stores, they're shrinking the number of stores. Vacancy rates for existing commercial spaces are rising, and new retail spaces are taking longer to lease. And you can see there's more information about this both in the email, the memo that Mr. Grant provided, and in the existing conditions report, the market analysis section that our project team members at Cosmont prepared in phase 1 of our project. Now, I want to look a little bit more specifically and talk a little bit more specifically about the viability of vertical mixed use in Inglewood. We asked late last year our economic advisors at Cosmont to run some feasibility analysis or pro formas of common development types that we've been exploring through these conversations. And they modeled 3 different types of possible vertical mixed use scenarios. And what they found is that as bad as standalone retail is faring, which we just talked about, vertical mixed use performs even worse in terms of rents and vacancies. And one reason for that is that providing adequate parking and loading and signage is a challenge for developers. If you think about standalone retail sites, it's much easier to have exclusive signage, exclusive parking, loading docks. It's harder to integrate that into a vertical mixed-use development. Construction costs are significantly higher for vertical mixed-use buildings due to code requirements, and the returns are lower. What that results in are projects that don't pencil out. They're not financially feasible. And as you saw in the article, or hopefully saw in the article that was shared through the agenda materials, but also in the examples mentioned by Mr. Grant, this is the reason why many cities are loosening or removing entirely their requirements for ground floor retail in mixed-use developments. And I want to just end here by emphasizing that, as you saw in the article that Mrs. Brooks shared, many cities are recognizing that ground floor retail is not financially feasible, that is not the only way to support active street fronts. So I wanted to share with you some examples through these images of how multifamily residential can support an active urban environment. And the pictures here represent some examples from projects without ground floor retail. So these are 100% multifamily developments in places like Inglewood, but also downtown Los Angeles, Playa Vista, Pasadena, so some regional examples, and then one other example here from Portland in the upper right-hand corner. So that is some context about how we reached the recommendation to only support horizontal mixed use in areas other than where there is extensive foot traffic, high foot traffic, like Market Street, and in our areas that are close to transit locations. I'm going to pause there and address any questions, and then I'll hand it off to Cory.
Yes. So surveys were one aspect, and technical advice was another aspect of the use horizontal or vertical. Am I correct? All right. The surveys, you said you had about 1,500 surveys for a population of 105,000 people, less than 1%. Is that I don't know what an adequate random sampling is. Is that adequate random sampling? Less than 1%?
It is what
I'm
we
just
got.
asking
So
statistically. I mean,
Yes.
that's what you got, I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But statistically, is that something that you would present as an adequate random sampling of the community?
Absolutely, and let me tell you why.
I'd like Jonathan to tell me, don't fail him out right there. Would you mind?
Well, I mean,
we're one team here. I don't frankly know what defines a statistically valid sampling
Okay.
of the population.
Thank you.
For some comparison, for state of California, usually a statistically valid sample will be 800 to 1,000 residents. And there's 50 million people in California
800 to 1,000?
total.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
the
all I'm
entire
asking.
state.
I
For the
don't
entire
know.
state, yeah.
I'm not making any judgment on it. It just sounded low, and I wanted to know what statistically a statistician would say was an adequate sample.
Yeah.
And I would just say that it does sound low, but in reality, that number supersedes any amount of community engagement that we've gotten through any other initiative that's happened as far as I can remember here in the city, right? And so part of that has happened because of the intentional effort to raise awareness about what we're doing, right? Oftentimes, people care to provide feedback for what they don't want, right, as opposed to providing feedback to what they do. When they're in support of something, then no one comes out, but when they don't want it, everybody comes out, right? And so, you know, we've put ourselves in a position to allow people as conveniently as possible the opportunity to provide feedback and give us input throughout this process. And this has been over two years, right? Our initial community engagement outreach happened through the development of our existing position report, where we solicited community feedback from, you know, in a number of ways. I think we had meetings here. We were actively involved at every event that the city held, and otherwise. And so I mean, I understand the technical components of that, but I think also there is a shift in our community's willingness to be involved in our process. And I think it starts with rebuilding trust, right, and allowing our community to feel as though they will be heard through the process. So some people just don't participate because they don't think that it matters, right? And so, I mean, so I'm just answering your question.
Yeah, that was not a judgment question. It was
Right.
just a question that I think anybody would ask about what is a random sampling. I'm not a statistician,
Right.
so that was, for me, an important question. I also want to know of the 1,500, how many agreed with the technical advice?
Well, there were, in not every case was there a recommendation. I mean, they were asked to select between alternatives. So when we go through the individual sites, if you advance a couple, you'll see that the information on how many,
No, I can't do the pointer.
oh,
Yeah, sorry.
on where public sentiment was will be included in what's presented for each of the sites this evening. But again, it was also included in the information that was sent to you last week.
Is that what they do?
Start here.
Point
and
of
then we'll go
clarification.
Kip, and then Greg.
Am I hearing that we are suggesting to move into horizontal mixed use for residential purposes?
For,
Could you repeat the
what we're
question?
suggesting is,
Could you repeat the question, please?
what we're.
Are we, are we discussing this to move from vertical into horizontal for residential purposes, to create housing? Is that what we are moving towards?
It's to allow the greatest flexibility for into the future, for, you know, economic conditions we can't foresee over the lifetime of this general plan, to either produce housing without requiring a commercial component, or to allow for commercial, or to allow for vertical mixed use. That's what horizontal mixed use allows, for all three of those options, so the most flexibility.
Okay.
Did this feasibility study look at Inglewood specifically, or did it just look at national and California trends? Because
Yes.
I think we're one of the only cities that has a major stadium, sports arena, concert hall, major theaters.
Yeah.
Which would imply that there's a demand for retail, bricks and mortar, rather than e-tail. And also, what was the assumptions in terms of land prices? I mean, I assume that the feasibility was based on reasonable land prices rather than expectations that are not realistic.
Yeah.
And it seems to conflict, with the policies about supporting small businesses when you're not providing for spaces for small businesses as part of a mixed-use project.
I'm not sure I understand the last portion, but the first portion of your question, yes, they looked at specific parcels along the corridors that we've identified as financial viability and used current market information that they developed during the first phase and is reported in the phase one existing conditions report.
And they felt that the land prices were reasonable?
Yeah, they look at local comparisons, local comps, so they'll look at the recent land sales.
Recent sales and, yeah.
And there are other ways you mentioned loading docks and ample parking. Did they look at making the feasibility of commercial space by promoting shared parking? And the spaces that I'm envisioning, at least along Centinela, are not loading dock type retail. So I'm wondering if that was kind of cooked into a pro forma that really doesn't pertain to some of these smaller pedestrian-oriented streets that could support ground floor retail at a smaller scale.
I think I think theirs were based on kind of run-of-the-mill assumptions for what types of costs are incorporated into vertical mixed-use development. This was at 150 units of multifamily and 3 different scenarios for sizes of retail components, including a 2,500 square foot retail component, which was the smallest component they looked at. They also looked at retail components up to 15,000. And in each of those, and then there was a middle ground of 7,500 square feet.
So they consider different lot sizes, a city target versus a smaller mixed-use
different
development,
types
not
of
a residential.
sizes.
And the parking standards are generated or taken from the city's existing code. Right. Yeah.
Which could also be looked at in terms of allowing for
Absolutely.
shared parking or less
Yeah.
parking in certain areas.
Yeah, the zoning code could always be evaluated, certainly.
Yeah, to the small business component, there's no aspect of recommending horizontal mixed use that would preclude having a small business or having a small business space. It allows for commercial of various sizes in a horizontal mixed use scenario.
I would disagree with that, because in creating that, you are outpricing, which is what you're just saying, small businesses. In a horizontal, right, standalone commercial businesses, 2,500 to 15,000. What small business is gonna need 15,000 square feet?
It would be sub-tenanted, so they would split it and, build to suit usually. So that could, our calculations don't necessarily, or not ours, Cosmo's, I suppose, don't look at tenant mix, it's just the average, rent price or return value on a per square foot basis. So those are, again, generally regional factors, right? But it doesn't look as deep as, what if we have this type or this type?
Can I get a word? Okay. When I think I understand land use, and I have a good grip on it, and then I hear comments, then I think I don't understand it. So I'm trying to clarify. So if there is a area that is zoned for horizontal mixed use, right? So that means that within each parcel could be commercial, could be residential, could be also a combination. So in other words, if somebody wants to develop a building with retail on the ground floor and residential, this land use would not prohibit it, correct?
Correct.
So if there was still a demand for that retail, let's say small business or what have you, 5, 10, 20 30 years because, you know, we're talking about buildings that would be, when does this go, this would take place for what year? How many years out?
20, 25 years?
out?
No, I mean, when would it begin, the land use?
Next year.
Next year, okay. So starting from 27 out for the next 25, 30 years, that allows some flexibility, whereas if we have vertical mixed use, then only retail and residential would go in that place. Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct.
So that means that horizontal doesn't preclude retail from being on the ground floor and having residential. It just, as it expands, it gives more flexibility
Right.
than a more restrictive. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, because that wasn't what I was hearing from.
So,
But it also
Question.
also doesn't articulate a vision for a street. It says anything goes. And I was thinking that we would want to say these streets are important as a pedestrian-oriented retail street, rather than a street that is intermixed with an apartment building, a commercial, mixed use. It's kind of a jumble of uses. There is some sort of a vision for that segment.
The challenge is, what I think we're trying to communicate is that if you require ground floor commercial, in effect, you are not gonna get housing.
Right.
Yeah, it just will not, the market will not deliver.
And the pedestrian, is that a separate land use? So that would fit into, that could also fit into horizontal,
It would
correct?
be based on scale, so, yeah, the physical character of the structures rather than the sandbox that it exists in.
So I think what I'm hearing is that if places that were initially targeted to be vertical mixed use, if they switch to horizontal mixed use, it actually expands the possibilities versus restrictive. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think too, that the vision, based on what's being recommended at this time, doesn't necessarily mean that there's no design style that can be created to help foster a theme for an area, right? And so those are things that we want to keep in mind. And Jonathan, I think when Cosmont also took into consideration kind of just our standard lot sizes related to what could potentially be developed along some of these nodes. I think I remember.
They looked at specific parcels.
Parcels,
Yes.
right, and I think there were some consistent lot constraints that became evident that helped to kind of push us in this direction. I know we have a number of shallow lots along some of our major corridors that also kind of restricted buildable area and things of that nature too, if I'm not mistaken, which also needs to be taken into consideration.
I think there's a difference in a street environment where people are walking in and out of a shop versus buzzing into a secure lobby. And that's what I'm envisioning, especially La Brea and Centinela at least, that I'm most familiar with. The difference of sort of even though it looked really pretty, it's a dead zone. People are living there, they're getting in their car from the garage and driving away. They're buzzing into a lobby, they're not going into a shop or restaurant, and it really kills the street life. And so I'm kind of concerned about the breadth of the statement saying anything goes everywhere, and that there's no real vision of that certain street segments or street neighborhoods that really do need to have retail.
And I think the counter.
And maybe no housing, if that's the case.
Yeah, and I think the other consideration is if you want to reinvigorate, revitalize the downtown and create an activity area, a hub, with some of those shopping, dining places, by creating the possibility for that to happen anywhere, it will go naturally to where the rent is the lowest, right? And so you're creating as many places for it to pop up anywhere but your downtown. So if we're over retailed, just broadly speaking, and we create more places for it to go, we don't find ourselves with a concentration in a potentially more desirable location. So at those activity centers surrounding SoFi, or downtown, for example.
And I'm talking about a neighborhood
Yeah.
services. I'm
And-
not gonna go downtown to go to Smart and Final.
Yeah, and that can absolutely still occur in the horizontal mixed-use designation, and that comes down to the property owners. I mean, are they gonna be, is a corner store gonna occupy a Class A commercial space, regardless if it's vertical or horizontal, no.
From what you're saying, it's very unlikely
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
have that you'll have that neighborhood serving commercial use in a residential neighborhood without a requirement that you have that.
Yeah,
Because you're saying apartments are the big thing, so we're gonna end up with apartments along Centinela and La Brea. That's all.
You're, in a similar fashion, though, that we're, through this, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I think that we're also able to incentivize kind of things that we want through this process, right? You know, through our policies and things of that nature. You know, there are areas that we're gonna be discussing where commercial is the priority, right? And within this horizontal mixed-use component, the reason why we're moving in this direction is strictly to provide the most flexibility. Not to create the wild, wild west of development, right? And I think part of this process allows us to kind of hear your thoughts, and then kind of strategically plan through what our approach would be as we move into the next phase of this thing, and how we can foster the type of development that makes it work, right? And so again, incentivizing, creating priority areas that we want to see certain types of development. Now, if it happens, it happens, but I think to the point that everyone is making is that if the ground floor retail is empty, then we run into the same, you know, the people who are coming downstairs from their apartment are just going straight to their garage and in their cars as well, right? And so people are walking up and down the street but aren't entering into these stores because no one's there to occupy them, right? So you know, but we can create objective design standards that create a look and feel of a commercial building on the ground floor, and there are other types of design mechanisms that we can put in place in policy to help meet the intent of what we're trying to create from our community. And so just a thought.
I think we're talking about, I'm sorry, I need to be called, raise my hand. So I think if I'm visualizing this correctly, we're looking for the highest and best use for the land in the general. And then when it comes down to year 5 and somebody wants to do something particular, it's gonna have to go to building and safety anyway. But the zoning will have already provided the umbrella for the possibility of an individual. That's how you
I want to give
look
Mr.
at it.
Perez an
The
opportunity.
biggest thing here is there's a cloud around it, all you really have to do is go to what the Staples Center used to be. I forget what it's called now, crypto or whatever it's called. And just go look at those beautiful buildings that were supposed to have retail at the bottom, that are completely empty. And all you have is artists come in and do street art on it, and it's become an eyesore. I'm assuming that's the fear, and that's actually part of what that article that Ms. Brooks sent. That was there, and it was designed, and it kind of gave you those examples, and it is the best use of land use. And then, to Bernard's point, there will be incentives to try to see what we can do, but we have to set something to move on to the next step. And although I agree with Kip that there are some things that should be looked at, but at this point, it's like we're trying to get the carrot, or we use the carriage in front of the horse, right? You gotta get moving first to the next step before we do anything else. That's what I'm assuming in this.
Maybe we'll just take 2 more hands, and I think some of these conversations might be easier when they're actually focused on specific areas, and we can get more into those contacts.
My question is, and maybe I didn't hear it well, when you announced that we would be adopting the vertical use as advised by whoever the technical people are that you use, I didn't hear all these caveats that are sound, but I didn't hear it. I didn't get that impression or hear it from what you said. What, is it in whatever you're presenting, all these caveats that we'll be doing the horizontal? Would that be primary, would that be a certain percentage, would it be, and how would that be overturned, or, I didn't hear any of that in all the caveats that were given. Did I miss something?
What I think the materials you were provided in advance and what I was trying to summarize here was the reason why in, I think, a few sites, the recommendation for your consideration was horizontal mixed use instead of vertical mixed use.
Just
The
a few
reason-
sites.
Yes. Mr. Grant?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to review the information that you sent, and I did some research, and I just wanted to share that with you. I think it was included in the packet. And what we're experiencing now is what we call ghost retail. And I think in planning ahead 20 to 30 years, we have to take these factors into consideration because the numbers don't lie at the end of the day. In similar California markets, mandatory ground floor retail in non-core areas
Can you
have
speak
seen.
just a little louder for us?
Oh, I'm
For us
sorry.
old people?
I'm sorry. I just got off work, so
Oh,
I'm kind
okay.
of
There's
bored
not
now.
a mic up there? There's not a mic up there?
Okay, I put together a report and I tried to do some due diligence and bring it before the committee. And so, I've got some information, statistics. In similar California markets, mandatory ground floor retail in non-core areas has seen vacancy rates as high as 20 to 25%. Okay, now, retail vacancy, currently it's hovering between 5.6 and 6.6 in South Bay and Inglewood submarkets. Rent trends, retail asking rents, they have declined by 3.8 year over year, indicating a surplus in available space. And I think that's what we have to be careful of, and when we're planning out 20 and 30 years, is that we don't end up with these same challenges. There are similar cities who have gone through this, and they're making corrections to a strategic way, similar to a horizontal mixed use, like San Jose, San Diego, Santa Monica, Sacramento, West Hollywood, Culver City, Rancho Cucamonga, Oakland, Berkeley, and Long Beach. So they're shifting to this horizontal strategy. And if I have to paint this picture, it's that, think of it this way. If we go vertical and we lock in retail at the bottom, and that retail space leaves, who's affected by that? The people above. That lease and that rent raises up. And by the way, I'm a banker. So I'm talking from a banking standpoint. And in some situations, in today's market, the vertical use is not bankable because it's too costly, it's too risky. It doesn't cover the debt service coverage that a bank requires. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that the rents, Inglewood home values have gone up 13.6%, while retail rents dropped 3.8%. The market is demanding housing, not more shops, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So, I'm in agreement with this horizontal mixed use because it gives you the flexibility to place retail in the future.
So, Jonathan, in the essence of time, I don't know how many more slides we have. We'd like to get through it this year.
Although I think the discussion we've been having is pertinent
It's
to a
good,
lot
too,
of
but I
things,
just don't
so
know
I
if we're trying
mean,
to squeeze that in. I don't want to squeeze anything in.
would you like to cede your time?
Sure. Reclaiming my time. So the struggle, because as soon as I think I understand it, because the horizontal mixed use is just the land use, and then there's layers of
Zoning.
the zoning and the city planning so it doesn't allow anybody or developer or owner just to do willy-nilly whatever they want to. And after I saw this, I was actually south of downtown, and I guess east of Figueroa, Adams, and there's a lot of apartment buildings there with retail on the bottom, and you're right, they're just empty. I mean, all of them. And you
Ghost
see,
retail.
huh?
Ghost retail.
That's why I laughed at the expression, because that about explains it. You know, people get concerned about traffic and about, you know, oh, there's gonna increase traffic. Well, the main traffic increase is now delivery. Every Amazon, FedEx, UPS, Postal Service, you know, they're on the road 24 hours now. It used to be that you could transit between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. through the city. That's not, you know, that's delivery traffic. So that retail has changed now because you're going on your phone and now somebody is in a truck or a car and delivering to you. Then you got the Lyft, and then, oh my God, my wife ordered, she wanted the pastrami sandwich from Langer's. And so she had to deliver it. It was like $70 for 2 sandwiches. But
That's
well, all the deliveries. But so that, again, that's increasing traffic, you know. So anyway, I'm done. I just think that we're spending a lot of time on saying the same thing over and over again.
All right, we'll move forward. I think at this point, we're all pretty comfortable with our discussion and kind of mental image of what our various bucket land use categories are. The only one we really haven't touched on is industrial flex, and in most cases, that's just repurposing former warehousing, you know, lofted ceiling things into, you know, oftentimes a brewery is a very popular
Hey, there you
example. But that's kind of, you know, it's still suitable for that industrial area. So that's the last, or the only one I'll really spend a minute talking about. So as Jonathan kind of laid out at the beginning, these first 4 sites that we're gonna mostly just touch on are places where the project team is recommending no change from what is currently allowed today, and the community, based on the feedback we received from the in-person open house and the survey, are in agreement with that. All 4 sites are, in this instance, within existing transit-oriented development planning areas. So they already have more recent visions laid out for them. They were adopted, I believe, between 2014 and 2016. So compared to our general plan, which was a document of the 80s, well, we're basically current. Afterwards, we're going to touch on, again, as Jonathan mentioned, sites where there is a change proposed, but that change is consistent with the community's input. And then finally will be our, I think there are actually 6 sites where we will get into some additional discussion, but building upon kind of this preamble we've had right now. So in the interest of time, I will move a little bit more quickly through these first 18-ish. I'll take a break after this. But again, these are no change proposed, these first 4, no change proposed, and consistent with the community's input. So our first one is a fairly short stretch on Centinela. The recommendation, and again, consistent with the public's opinion or preference on the alternative, is horizontal mixed use. We are recommending at 5 stories, and that is again consistent with the existing Fairview Heights downtown transit-oriented development plan. Next one is down at the intersection south part of the city, Imperial and Crenshaw, part of the aptly named Crenshaw Imperial TOD plan. And the community's support 34-4 for the vertical mixed-use alternative as already envisioned by this plan, largely due to its proximity to regional transit. The green line is just south, as well as, a major vehicular thoroughfare as well, intersection 2. So we'll be moving on. Of course, I think everybody, most folks in the community's favorite, looking at downtown. We did split it into 4 sub-areas just so we could have a little bit more discrete discussion. Also in line with how the, again, existing transit-oriented development plan for the area kind of carves it out. In all of our 4 working north to south, M1, M2, M3, M4 at the bottom with our node, a variation in heights to really create concentrations of activity. and then allow some less intense development mid-block as it abuts some of the adjacent residential on either the east or west side. And up at that M1 sub-area dot, if you can see it on this screen, it might be a little too small, is a proposed origin destination point for the ITC project. So this is a pretty crucial citywide and then region-wide transit facilitator, which at this point is envisioned as bus rapid transit, particularly facilitating movement from the K line, green line, I think, south to the SoFi Intuit area. And then obviously with, the intent is to support light rail in the future when there's enough demand for it. But again, varying heights, consistent. We can see pretty heavily, except in our M3 area, supportive of the horizontal mixed use recommendation. And our final area, which introduces, I believe, our only instance of industrial flex for our focus areas specifically. This is the Westchester Veterans TOD plan. Right now it is kind of a mishmash of industrial uses, predominantly on the lighter side, mostly indoor, like not outdoor manufacturing that is particularly odorous or noisy, otherwise offensive to neighbors. And so the idea would be to maintain that and continue kind of the cleanup moving forward. The TOD plan envisions it as an employment generating hub, with the northern portion kind of slated as a tech town, looking more into research development, leaning into some of the silicon wave that has been, kind of running rampant in other portions of California. So moving even further into the clean, light industrial business park, particularly in the north area. And then in the south, also incorporating some of those adaptive reuse opportunities for entertainment and hospitality, not quite, but dining. Okay, so those are our 4 no change, no contest sites, consistency with the public. Anything we want to pull, speak now or forever hold?
You were just speaking then of N2?
N2, yes. So this area is just south. The purple on the map, actually, the darker of the two is not in a focus area, but those are like kind of artist loft style. So the southern portion would be even less contentious with its neighbors, given the proximity to residential. And then obviously the area to the north as well, keeping everything indoors. But industrial flex is the recommendation for both, consistent again with what is adopted today.
Then L didn't change, right?
Correct, yep. Going once, going twice.
So it says.
Alrighty, so this is our big block, but again, should be pretty non-contentious. The recommendation for all of these sites will be consistent with the community's stated preference, given obviously the couple of choices that were made. If at any point you would like to pull one out for discussion, please let me know. If I don't hear anything, I will try and look over my shoulder as we move through them. If I don't see a hand, I will continue forward. Okay, our first segment, actually there are 2, is Arbor Vitae from the 405 to La Brea, and then segment 2 of this stretch is La Brea to Prairie. On the western side of La Brea, the recommendation in this instance is horizontal mixed use at 4 stories, again, consistent with the community's feedback. That was the most popular alternative in this case. And again, does provide that flexibility for the commercial uses, while also allowing for an expansion of residential consistent in scale and character with the existing residential communities to the north and south. Moving to the AC2 portion on the east side, horizontal mixed use, or sorry, my apologies, we offered 2. Multifamily residential just edged out horizontal mixed use in this case, but for a few reasons, specifically the character of the existing residential on that street, maintaining a consistent character and recommending multifamily residential, again, at a scale that is in line with its neighbors to the north and south. And of course, we cannot forget the Centinela Hospital there, but we will get to that a little later.
Like squinting, I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what are we doing?
Yes,
This is
so
back
this
in
is
the
just,
back.
I'm sorry?
This map is in the back, it's consistent with what you have up there? This is
Yes,
Provided. Okay.
yeah, and you may have, yes,
Yeah, everybody.
sorry, I won't introduce any confusion. Okay, seeing no hands, hearing no
Page 9.
cries, moving forward. Okay, our next one is C2, the stretch of Prairie, south from Manchester down to Century Boulevard. We provided 2 alternatives in addition to other, and the GPAC in this instance recommended we add the commercial-only alternative. Originally, we were going to move forward with just horizontal mixed use. And I'm very glad we listened because the community agreed that this is a stretch that really should be maintained for commercial, given its proximity to, significant attractors, the Forum, SoFi, and then obviously just ever so slightly further south into it Dome. All right, another combo, Prairie and Imperial. The D2 portion is actually part of the Crenshaw Imperial TOD plan. So the recommendation in this case, again, is consistent with the existing adopted plan and also supported by 33 to 6, the community's preference as well. So that one, obviously 0 issues. And then for D1, we offered the community 2 alternatives, horizontal mixed use and commercial only, with horizontal mixed use winning out. Today, this is a commercial service zone, which of course, moving forward in a horizontal mixed use configuration, those uses would be permitted to continue without issue. But again, introducing the opportunity to weave in some of that residential product type at a scale specifically on the west side, consistent with adjacent residential development. So obviously not symbolized as the unincorporated community of Lennox, right? So they're kind of in that carve out. But something that we want to consider our impact on our neighbors. So hearing nothing, seeing no hands, we shall move forward. The first of our 2 stretches of the F focus area in this section, we'll get to F3 at towards the very end. This is the segment from the 405 to Inglewood, so relatively short in the grand scheme of things. It is currently airport commercial serving. The recommendation is airport commercial serving, and the alternative preferred by the community, also airport commercial oriented. At a height of 6 stories, Okay, moving just a little bit to the east. Now talking about the stretch of Century from Inglewood to Buren Avenue. There was 1 alternative provided, although obviously we were taking comments and feedback through the other option. But the community majority supported horizontal mixed use, and of course the recommendation follows suit. Also at a height of 4 stories. In this instance, since it is kind of a mid-block section, anchored on the west side by some of that more intense airport serving commercial use, and then on the east side, getting closer to some of our entertainment uses, allowing this to be a little bit lower scale to fit in with the adjacent residential to the north and the south, while still also providing flexibility for property owners. And what is shown just off to the far right side of that image is a proposed location for a node, which would allow slightly more intense development up to a maximum of 6 stories. It will not be so all-encompassing as that purple circle you can see. It's going to be a little bit more tailored. Right now we're thinking 200 to 300 feet from the corners. So it's not going to be particularly extensive. It will really focus on just those corner adjacent properties. But that is still in the works.
Question, why would F2 be limited to 4 stories? Because 3 is 5 and F1 is 6.
Go for it.
I think the intent was to be consistent with the recommendations of the Urban Land Institute, who did a focus study of this portion of the Century Corridor, and their recommendations were that this middle portion be more neighborhood oriented, whereas the other sections were more kind of either visitor oriented or sports and entertainment oriented, so.
Okay. And just to the north, the yellow on the screen is one of the lower density residential designations in the city. And I think it caps out around 25 feet, which is two and change stories. So making sure that we're not, you know, blocking too much sun. Okay, moving on. We're now looking at GR only, that's not true. There are multiple stretches on Manchester. But this is obviously the furthest west extent of Manchester before we hit the 405, stretching actually from Ash to Fir. The alternative presented to the community was horizontal mixed use at 4 to 5 stories or other, and a pretty resounding support for the horizontal mixed use alternative in this case. Yes, horizontal mixed use at 5 stories in this instance. Yeah, actually, I drove right through there on my way down today.
You
Okay.
could just say into town, like
Yeah.
we in the country.
Yeah, you know, anything further south side of town. Okay, moving up to the northern portion of the city now, we're looking at, again, the furthest west stretch of Centinela. And so this is from the city boundary all the way over to La Brea. Two proposed alternatives, horizontal mixed use and vertical mixed use. In this case, the community just narrowly preferred horizontal mixed use. And obviously for the reasons, many of the reasons Jonathan mentioned and we discussed previously, the recommendation also in line with the horizontal mixed use preference. Yes.
I'm not sure the public was privy to that economic analysis, but my comment is that this is a fairly close vote. I mean, people seem to want to retain a neighborhood commercial district, a lot of people, versus having apartments up and down the street. And in driving that street or living in that neighborhood, it seems like this area is kind of split in two. There's a neighborhood commercial orientation, small scale, to the west, and it seems like remnant apartments and bungalow courts to the east. And maybe there's a way to split the difference and say that the horizontal mixed use is appropriate where there are now currently residential, and vertical mixed use in the area where there's a lot of neighborhood serving uses that are likely to recycle into apartment buildings. I'm just, worst case scenario, if everything is so uneconomic and everyone wants to build, at this point wants to build apartments, we may lose a neighborhood serving retail space.
Just so
And
I'm ready.
it also articulates a vision for the city rather than reacting to market trends that may not happen, may reverse in 30 years. So at least it says our vision is to protect a neighborhood serving commercial district. And it looked like Acacia Enterprise was kind of a dividing line.
Okay.
Between where there's kind of leafy, kind of like, it's a nice break along a commercial street are these apartments with lawns and a bungalow court. And then west of that are really small scale, you know, like, and restaurants like Serving Spoon. You know, I can't imagine someone tearing that down and building an apartment building.
And that's on the western.
The western part, and Smart and Final. I mean, that serves the community pretty well.
Thank you. Are there any other thoughts in response, or, you know, anything else related to that discussion that any other GPAC members, we can bring it back for discussion amongst the project team, of course, but if anyone else wants to chime in on any elements,
I have a question.
please, yeah.
The ideas that we are discussing this evening seem to go more with the policy. Splitting them and designating this can be used for that, that can be used for that. That's more of the policy component. When do we get to that part?
That would be, what Kip's describing would be defined in the land use designation, the description of the.
What was the question? When do we get to?
The policy component, like, And I'm thinking back to some of the conversations we previously had, the Manchester preservation, the Arborvitae preservation area. That's preserving the community serving businesses there in favor of it, getting. But it sounds as if it's more policy. If we're deciding this side gets to do that and this side gets to do that, you're splitting the land use. That sounds policy as opposed to what we're doing here, no?
Kip's recommending controlling that through what land use is permitted. So if I understand correctly.
Yeah, the original vision is the whole street be neighborhood serving with mixed use. And because of their certain findings that will likely not happen, at least recognize that there's a portion of it that exists that is serving my neighborhood and the neighborhood south and that whole part of town. And there's another area that really hasn't recycled. I guess demand or people aren't, walking that part of the sidewalk, and there's still apartment buildings, which is kind of surprising on a major commercial street. And so if you can't say the whole stretch is going to be neighborhood serving retail with residential above, I'm suggesting that we reflect what's there now and reinforce that into the future. And protecting businesses like Smart and Final and Serving Spoon that could conceivably be torn down and have an apartment building built.
Which is going back to what I just said. That should be policy there, because in a horizontal mixed use, and based on the definitions that we have, we don't get to tell future owners what they're going to do with that land. It's zoned for X, Y, Z. So if we are going to preserve, would that not fall under policy?
He's saying, he's advocating for controlling what can be built there through the land use definition.
So that the property owner couldn't
That's what we're-
remove the serving spoon, for example. Like or they couldn't replace it with housing, like Serving Spoon would, or another
So how do you do that?
restaurant tenant.
Without it being policy? How do you do that? If the definition of mixed use is, of horizontal or vertical, whichever one, indicates this, 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 are we now deviating from the letter of the law to go to the spirit? Because if it says, I as an owner have the right to do this, this, or that,
Yeah.
and you're now telling me I can't do any of those because you want me to do this, that's not going within the
Yeah, not,
confines.
I think, go, Bernard, go first.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is that, by controlling the land use designation, we remove that flexibility, right? So what Kip is advocating for is along certain areas, the vertical mixed use makes sense, which now restricts you from having ground floor apartments. It has to be commercial, right? Which now would, and then as we move forward into the next phase of what this general plan looks like, is that we go now from the 50,000 foot level down to the 100-foot level, which is modifying the zoning code to be consistent with these land use designations that would make room for uses and design standards and whatever other development standards that become applicable for the types of developments that are happening. So, so and correct me if I'm wrong, Kip, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, by maintaining this, these vertical mixed use component on one, maybe even if it was on one side of the street versus the other, right? Like on the higher, on the south side, which is adjacent to more higher density residential uses, right? There's this vertical component that may, where the 99, where the Smart and Final is, where the Serving Spoon is, where you see the majority of these neighborhood serving retail uses, that side may maintain this vertical mixed use component, while the other side of the street, which is more adjacent to low density residential, may have a different land use designation. I mean,
I'm not saying that.
okay.
Because
Oh,
on the north side of the street I know there's a liquor store, but it
Right.
serves a community. There are some daycare centers and some preschools, there's
Jack in
a
the Box.
dentist. So I think those, it's really east and west
Okay.
in my mind.
In your mind, okay.
And what I think the city should be trying to do is identify where there are neighborhood commercial districts that should be preserved.
Right.
And that's what, I'm not saying restrict everything, it's just that we envision there, and I would think our vision statement is supporting various scales of business and supporting neighborhood commercial.
Right.
And small businesses. And this is one area where I think we can articulate that clearly and then say, here's an appropriate building form that would do that. And if you want to tear down Serving Spoon and build an apartment building, you put a replacement space in there that would accommodate a restaurant or a neighborhood serving use.
So that becomes policy.
And
Right, and
that's where
so
I'm-
that becomes policy, right? Is it? Or, I'm getting a funny look. Sorry.
In my mind, that's your land use designation.
Well, yeah.
But the policy is
Well-
to preserve neighborhood commercial use.
Right, but I mean, I guess what he's saying is
Requiring ground floor.
requiring the replacement of the commercial that's lost. So if there was a restaurant there, I mean, this is where it becomes difficult, right? Because again, the market dictates who comes into that building and who doesn't. Like, we don't
Like
have.
the bank.
Yeah, or the banker, right? Like, it has to make sense, right? It has to pencil, but I understand what you're saying, and I hope that I was able to clarify your point.
I understood exactly, but I'm thinking back to our last conversation. You weren't here for the last meeting when we were talking about specific areas, and we were informed that those are policy things, very similar to what Kip just said. Those type of designations have to be through policy. Through land use, we can say, yes, it's going to be A, B, or C. But to put stipulations on that requires policy.
Well, I mean, it can be a requirement, right? It can be a requirement in the code, right? So, but that's a little bit more, that's more when we get down into the weeds. Right now, we're still flying with oxygen masks on, right? We're way in the air, right? So we're establishing a vision, and I think what Kip is advocating for is kind of formulating what that vision looks like through what Jonathan said, through the land use designation, and then what would be allowed and what's not. Is that right, Jonathan? Is that right?
Yeah, and what I would recommend is that if we have clarity on what Kip's recommended in terms of west versus east, that we raise that for the rest of the
Right.
group to, show through a sign of hands, show either support for that option or the recommendation that was put before them. But I want to make sure that it's clear both to Kip and to the other members of the committee what the alternative that he's proposing.
Oh, that sounds good to me. So when do you want that vote comes later?
No,
Or now?
now.
Okay.
So if it's clear what Kip's proposing, what I would love to do is ask for a show of hands for support for the alternative Kip has presented, and then a separate show of hands for the recommendation for horizontal mixed use throughout the entirety
Could
of
it be
this
verbalized?
area.
So
I'm not-
we know-
yeah, I'm not clear
we
on
know
the
what we're voting for?
You went back
On
and
the
forth.
west
It's like a
half,
motion.
from the identified
Oh, it's
location,
La Brea.
retain commercial, and then the east half would be okay for mixed use.
No.
Vertical
No,
mixed
I'm
use
saying
west of the
vertical
gate.
mixed use, which would require some form of commercial use
For
of
the entire
ground
stretch.
floor.
Vertical
Would be
mixed
on the
use
west-
west of Acacia.
West
Oh,
of
okay.
Acacia
And
Enterprise.
So, okay.
horizontal mixed
And then
use.
anything
Yeah.
goes,
Yeah.
hopefully it's small scale commercial, neighborhood serving. But if it's an apartment building, that area seems to already have apartments and residential. There's Sunday Gravy, which might be recycled into an apartment, and the funeral home. But that area seems to already have a high density of residential already. It's really not, it doesn't feel like a neighborhood commercial street on the east side of Sentinel, on the east end of Sentinel.
Oh, I'm just a little confused.
I me
If
too.
the recommendation is either horizontal or vertical, why are we talking about one side of the street versus?
Because they're
the other?
recommending all
The whole street,
horizontal,
the whole
so
street.
the whole street could be apartments.
So from,
Whereas the vision is that at least a portion of the street provides some neighborhood commercial uses or neighborhood commercial uses as part of the mixed-use development.
is the line of demarcation here, Inglewood Avenue, what is that?
It looked like Acacia and it jogs over to Enterprise.
Yeah, I think it's Enterprise, it's the
Can
the
you
easternmost street.
put it like a motion, like, let's say it was a motion, and
I'm
so. Or can we have it
Yes,
agree in
I
this
will be
meeting?
happy to do that. Do you mind if I articulate that, or would you like to?
No, go ahead.
The motion on the floor is a recommendation that for this focus area, H, that the recommendation from the GPAC to the Planning Commission is that vertical mixed use be required, or the designation for the western half of Centinela, divided about Acacia and Enterprise, and horizontal mixed use for the eastern half of Centinela, from there to around La Brea. The alternative is horizontal mixed use through the entire stretch of Centinela just in this focus area.
So that would be KIP number one would be half and half.
Yes.
And KIP alternatives would be both.
Would be just horizontal.
We move to the vote.
Yes, and so through a show of hands.
Any questions?
Discussion? So, to have a uniform, it could still change, right? It could still change down the line if they decided they didn't want it to be all the same.
Yeah, any property owner could pursue a general plan amendment if they wanted to go that path.
Yeah, you know, because we also have to consider the city's plan for their, I'm just gonna say their demand by the state for housing. So that could change.
Yeah, mixed use is a fun one. Because, yeah, this is,
Corey, would that have precedence over what Kip just said? If the state requires 7,000 plus more homes by a certain period of time, would that supersede what he is suggesting?
I'm not saying you can't build an apartment building.
That's not what I'm saying.
On
I'm-
Centinela, the west
That's not what
side.
I'm saying.
But if you tear down Serving Spoon to build an apartment, you have a ground floor restaurant space or some
Yeah.
sort
You
of
would-
retail space to accommodate it.
Through the next housing element cycle, the city would have to identify the locations where it can provide the capacity for housing that the state determines is, the housing needs that is
So the answer
assigned.
is yes.
And they have to go through an entire process of identifying what those sites are.
So, not to get away from KIP, but what you said is essential. We don't hear anything about approximately how many houses that would, since we have a mandate, right, to produce more houses. So we don't hear how many, the vertical, obviously the horizontal, obviously the vertical would provide more housing.
not necessarily.
Well, it could. Let's say, obviously, it could provide more housing, because in a vertical, you only have so much space. In a horizontal, you only have so much space. In a vertical, you have.
Horizontal doesn't mean that the development has to be horizontal. It just means you can build 100% next to
Well,
each
I know
other. You
you
can go
have
to the same
stories, 6
scale.
stories.
You can go to the same scale of housing.
But still, my question is, has any of this come with approximations of how many houses it will provide?
That's the next
That's
step.
the next phase.
Yeah,
That's-
so what, you know, once we understand the community's preference, we can start putting some numbers to it, and, you know, there is value to it being iterative, but.
We have a compliant housing element, right?
We do.
Correct.
Yeah.
So have we met our, or
Yeah.
way over
We're
our?
way,
We're way below.
we've established, we've established the capacity to build well over our REIT.
All right, so that should be a concern.
So it's not, so what we're establishing through the process of these land use changes will, I mean, Jonathan probably knows better than me, but I'm assuming it'll put us well beyond what we're gonna need.
We don't know.
But we don't know
what the
these
state is
numbers.
There's a
the state's
motion on the floor,
So, but wait, but before we move forward, real quick, before we move forward in that motion, I just wanna make sure that we're clear. So what Kip's proposing is from west of Acacia to La Cienega and east of Acacia to La Brea. Is that the understanding of what the boundaries are? And I wanna make sure that everybody understands what the boundaries are before we vote.
It's
And
it's
it's
actually
both
an
sides of the
offset
street.
intersection, so it's Acacia and Enterprise.
And Enterprise, okay, but moving west to La
West and
Cienega
east.
becomes the most western line of demarcation. Okay, so,
Is that both sides of the street?
And then
Yes,
we're talking
north
about
and
moving
south.
it,
Yeah,
designate that area vertical instead of horizontal.
correct.
just the west,
Portion of it.
just the west.
Why would you want it to be more, okay.
So well, there's a motion on the floor, and then I guess there's now someone who wants to second that motion.
I'll
then we can
second the
vote.
motion
Okay, so there's a second on the floor, now we just need
for
to
the
vote.
50/50
Oh.
aspect. We don't have a real quorum or anything, but I mean, this is just to get a feel for who's where and what.
Right, so would you like to, how do you want to do this, Jonathan?
Show of hands
You
for
got
the
it.
first alternative, which is the split.
This is still.
All right.
Okay, and then a show of hands who supports the other alternative, which is horizontal mixed use throughout the entire.
Four, there you go. The motion carries.
Okay.
Lit it up.
And they can.
Now, listen, I want to make sure that there's understanding leaving tonight. What you're providing by way of your feedback, we're going to take as a recommendation. I want to make sure that I'm clear on that.
Yeah.
What is decided tonight is not finite, is not, and so the ultimate decision-making body on this comes from the city council. Okay, so we will have and make our earnest effort to present the recommendations. We will state the GPAC's recommendation to the decision makers, and then it'll be up to them to determine what they want to do moving forward. So just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that.
When does that happen, when you actually present anything? Like, what's happening now? What timeframe are we looking at before some of these recommendations go? Because I know it's in phases, obviously, but
Yeah.
when's the next opportunity to present in front of council?
The intent is May 6th to the
May 6th,
planning,
okay.
To the
planning
planning
commission.
Okay.
And from there, I guess, June to the city council, and just not to beat a dead horse, Jonathan mentioned this earlier, but when we go to city council, we're essentially asking for permission to move forward at this time. A year from now, we're asking them to adopt. Okay, so the analysis, and as to your point, Hervé, as we get the permission to proceed with these different land use changes, then we start the environmental process, and that's when a lot of this, the analysis comes into play regarding buildable build-out area and things like that. So that's what we're asking for now.
But Bernard, why can't we still have a framework of how many houses that would function? I mean, why would we do all of this and then we find that we're falling way short on the residential requirements?
Well, because that's a different element, and so the housing element is on a
It's
different
essential
cycle.
element,
Right,
isn't
but
it?
it's on a
It's a
different cycle.
mandated element.
Right, but it's on a different cycle. So what happens is, our housing element is gonna need to be updated in 2029 or 2030, right? And so by then, the state would have determined what our RENA would be within the next housing cycle. And so that's gonna come on the heels of us completing this project.
Like-
So-
Like the T word, that nobody
Oh,
wants to
yeah.
mention.
Where's your big
Is there-
T-shirt?
Bernard, is there
No, the T
any,
word, traffic.
is there any projections for the state
You
requirement?
got it in.
No.
No.
No,
It's something to wait till.
No,
Won't
and-
come for a year or so.
Probably 2028, we'll start getting the draft numbers.
yeah.
I mean, we are creating additional, we are looking at creating additional housing capacity.
Right.
The city was able to accommodate the last cycle without any rezoning. So
It's gonna be pretty significant.
I would bet through this process, I'm not gonna tell you how much I'll bet, but that, you know, if we go forward with these recommendations and allow housing in places where it's not allowed today,
We'll be able
by
to
right,
satisfy
we are going to
We're gonna
be
satisfy.
okay in terms of meeting the housing element needs for
We
that
may
cycle.
designate one particular section for the housing, and that'll satisfy the entire element. We may not like it, but it would satisfy us with the state. And they probably will.
But we'll get the traffic into circulation, okay? Come on, man, we got time, a little bit of time.
Okay,
Can we,
we're gonna move
go
on, we
ahead.
got our motion passed, so we'll pursue the split option. All right, moving just next door to the northernmost stretch of La Brea, coming down from the, almost the northernmost part of the city boundary. Actually, West 64th is our northern line of demarcation. Again, two options presented to the public, horizontal and vertical mixed use, with horizontal mixed use winning out by a little bit more in this case. And so the recommendation, consistent with the community's stated preference of horizontal mixed use at 4 stories. And as we had discussed, I believe it was either GPAC 3 or 4, the node being just on the southern half of the La Brea-Centinela intersection being appropriate for intensification, but not the northeast and northwest corners of that intersection.
We're keeping that part, right?
I'm sorry, please.
We're keeping that part.
Oh, yes, yes.
And this is the same situation as Centinela, even more so. This has even more neighborhood serving uses. It's got Fiesta Martine, it's got some small restaurants, artist galleries, and to imagine that as not being a neighborhood commercial or neighborhood serving, I just can't imagine it becoming an apartment neighborhood. I mean, it's just, right now, I'm not sure a lot of people walk up and down it. During Art Walk, they do. But we'd be losing a lot of small businesses along that stretch if we allowed for really anything to go. And that's why I'd suggest that be retain the vertical mixed use requirement.
We can have another motion.
I move. I mean, and the vote was fairly close, not as close as Centinela,
Yeah.
but fairly close.
Yeah.
And just the thought of losing some of these businesses to an apartment building. I don't know, I move that we retain the vertical mixed use designation for area, is that I or L?
Aye. Yeah. Okay. And second.
I'll second.
Chair Douglas seconds. Any discussion before we move?
Well, I mean, just in thinking about this, and I'm sorry for muddying the waters, but someone can build apartments there now. I mean, the state allows them to build apartments.
Right.
Right, so-
But in articulating a vision, and hopefully that's followed up with zoning or encouragements or incentives, the city would press for a mixed-use development that would have replacement commercial or just a small scale.
Right, but if we limit the flexibility, then by virtue of the land use designation, we're already requiring it, so there's no need to incentivize it, right? So if we're saying that this area is gonna be vertical mixed use, right? We're, by virtue of that land use designation, we're saying that this is gonna be ground floor retail, period. So, no matter what, it is what it is, as opposed to us, it being, or potentially being horizontal mixed use, and the city now, by virtue of the zoning code or through policy, creates an incentive program to encourage the development of ground floor retail, right? Through some sort of streamline or whatever the case may be, that would incentivize the developer to replace that neighborhood serving retail use that we might have lost in the event that the property was sold. So I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I know there's a motion on the floor and we can vote on it, but I'm just thinking to myself that as the part of what we're trying to do through this process is maintain some level of local control, right?
Right.
And so by doing that, by providing the most flexibility, that local control comes back to us, because someone can come in and say, hey, look, A, B, X, Y, Z, I'm gonna build these apartment units, city, and the state tells me that I can, and I'm gonna do it, and you guys gotta figure it out. And so, but if we're creating a situation where flexibility wins, now we have a little bit more control, we can kind of get what we want.
I disagree. I mean, in that case, we're saying you can do anything, anywhere in the city of Inglewood.
Well,
We're not saying that these are important streets that we would like to see,
But
not the state, we would like to see as a neighborhood commercial, neighborhood serving.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree, but what I'm saying is, there's a way for us to legislate that through the zoning code,
That's what
Not
I'm
if you
going.
don't say it.
right?
Not if you don't say, this is a neighborhood serving street. And we're not even doing that. We're just saying vertical
Well,
versus
yeah,
not.
well,
We're not
that's what I'm
saying neighborhood commercial.
Well, I wanna say, we haven't done that yet, right? It doesn't mean that it's not coming. But what we're doing here right now
Being more restricted.
is creating a framework for, because there's a whole nother, as we continue to move forward through this process, there is a whole nother component to this land use plan that needs to be figured out and worked through, right? And so we shape our neighborhoods through regulatory standards, right? And so I mean, that's just my point. I could be overstepping, but I just think that is something just a point, a comment on it. So the motion is a motion, and so
In layman terms, because we're constantly coming up with thoughts, I'm hearing your advocacy for some of the businesses, the retail businesses. As part of this development, wouldn't there be an opportunity or provision available for those businesses to perhaps relocate, upgrade their business, find new space within the neighborhood under these land areas, for lack of better terms, forgive me? I could see something like that without losing Serving Spoon, as an example. Perhaps the ability for these businesses to relocate within the area still, because of some of the development taking place on that particular land. Am I making sense at
Yeah, you
all?
are, I think you are,
Okay.
because they might even get an incentive.
To
Service
upgrade
schools
their
would love to,
space
like,
and still
have a
be
larger
a
space. They might get off the one
surplus.
across the street that's larger than they, they don't want to handicap independent businesses. That makes sense.
But nothing in our plan says that that's our vision. Right now, if we said horizontal, we're saying you can do anything, anywhere, and you're not respecting local businesses or neighborhood serving businesses. They could just build an apartment building, and we will have not articulated a vision saying, this is serving the neighbors. You know, people
So
are
we
walking to
include
these
that in the
stores.
vision,
I'm not-
maybe.
The goals and policies can help guide those decisions as they come before the planning commission and the
Yeah,
city council.
planning commission and building and safety, they probably wouldn't allow something like that.
But I mean, and you know, Kip,
Because I
know
support what you're saying.
Then where would we say that? Now that you brought it up, there's nothing in the plan or nothing we've been talking about saying these are neighborhoods, commercial centers. We're just saying mixed vertical, horizontal, and sometimes commercial. We're not saying here are your neighborhood shops that are serving the adjacent neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to articulate here.
Right now, we've been talking about it in terms of scale. And the land use designations or definitions can describe it as,
Okay.
you know, low, mixed use low, neighborhood the intent is that those are neighborhood serving retail or housing.
Right.
Mixed use at a higher scale could be for neighborhood serving or regional serving commercial. Those are distinctions or descriptions that you can have within the land use definition or the land use designation.
So we're still 80,000 miles up.
Right.
We're coming down. I mean, and I understand. I think where you are, where you're getting to. I think we're going to land in the same place, right? As we parachute closer to this thing becoming final. But we haven't even established yet the true land use designations, right? And the land use designations within this plan are gonna, like Jonathan said, gonna determine the fabric of what that neighborhood looks like by virtue of maintaining certain uses, the allowance, incentivizing, and getting what you want, right? Because I agree that street is a very eclectic part of our city. I guess I even think about like, man, like what could we call this area? Like right? It could have it has a really cool vibe. You know, you got Stormberger, you got the cleaners, you got a whole bunch of things over there, right? So I think we're gonna land in the same place, and we hear you. So I don't. But there was a motion. So let's go there, and then so we can make sure we get out of here on time. And there was a second. So then let's vote.
All in favor of the recommendation to move forward with vertical mixed use? That is the alternative one. All in favor of vertical mixed use? One. Okay, all in favor of the recommendation here of horizontal mixed use? Okay. Oh,
No, go on. You'll have to go back. One vote ain't going to
stay horizontal. All right.
This room might not be there by next year. We would have spent like an hour. Sorry, no disrespect, I'm just saying. Okay.
All right, we're going to jump down now, kind of more to the center part of the city. We're now looking at the Centinela Hospital campus. Within our focus area boundary, all of these parcels are owned or occupied currently by the hospital and its extensions. So we're not looking at the other similarly colored pink on the adjacent part, just inside our little Amtrak in O. Our two alternatives proposed to the community were medical commercial and medical residential, so just a minor distinction between the two. Medical commercial would remove the ability for the hospital to develop a residential component to their services, and medical commercial, well, it would effectively allow them to expand their outpatient and inpatient practice in a clinical and also outpatient settings. So we actually had the benefit of speaking with representatives from the hospital, and learned that a residential component is not in the plans in the near term, and that they are looking to expand their services. So medical commercial is the recommendation, which would allow for them to continue to provide as they do today,
Sure.
and then grow moving into the future.
It only makes sense, especially if the population continues to increase.
There are changes on the horizon.
Okay? Okay.
That's all I'm at liberty to say right now.
Got it.
So,
Okay, so the recommendation, medical commercial, okay, we're moving forward. Now to our smallest focus area, up at the northeast corner of the city, intersection of West 79th and Van Ness. Before the public was the option for horizontal mixed use or commercial only, which would be a maintenance of the status quo. both at 3 stories in scale, again, largely to respect the existing adjacent residential uses. Horizontal mixed use won out, again, kind of a narrow victory, and the planning or project team recommendation follows suit of a horizontal mixed use designation, also at that 3-story scale, again, with respect to the neighbors. Alrighty, and so now this is what we envisioned would be the larger deliberation period, but I think some of the discussion, again, that we've had previously tonight should help inform some of the decisions or not that are made tonight for these topics. So places where the recommendation deviates from the community's preference or indicated preference. So we do introduce some different text color on the map. Blue will indicate a change exclusive to the vertical mixed use preference indicated by the community. So we are changing it to horizontal, and that was something Jonathan introduced and has been discussed at length. And then anywhere you see red, it is just a deviation in height, or in only one case you will see a step away from a community's preference that is not vertical mixed use. So I just realized that sounds very convoluted, so we'll take it one at a time. We're looking at La Brea again, this time south of our Centinela discussion that we just had. The southern portion, B2, falls within the downtown Fairview Heights transit-oriented development plan. The alternative presented to the community of vertical mixed use is consistent with that document and was the most supported alternative, so the recommendation in kind follows suit. So B1 is where the community indicated a preference for vertical mixed use over a commercial-only alternative, but for the reasons Jonathan and our group have discussed, the project team is recommending instead horizontal mixed use and at a 1-story height increase over the stated preference made by the community. So south of Centinela, this little segment will be 5 stories. Once you transition north of Centinela, it drops back down to 4.
Repeat that part, please.
About the heights?
South, it will be.
Yeah, south of Centinela in area B1, it's proposed for 5 stories. Maximum 5 stories. When you cross Centinela to the north, that's focus area I, which we just went through. That will be 4 stories. So there is a stepping down, max, yes, 4 stories max. There is a stepping down once you cross north of Centinela.
Where's the DMV? Is that B1 or B2?
B2. It's in B1, right?
Is it just off that?
Where's High Park?
Yes, B2.
Oh, it's in high, yeah.
So I'm not hearing.
And the node is 6 stories.
Correct, and this is the same node that was presented on I as well. But yes, thank you for pointing that out, yeah.
Okay.
So hearing nothing. Okay, so C1, this one is actually pretty straightforward in the grand scheme of things. Prairie, south from Florence down to Manchester. The preferred alternative by the community was horizontal mixed use as opposed to just multifamily residential, so allowing for a commercial component to come in if desired. The community's preferred height was 3 to 4 stories, but the recommendation is coming in at 5 stories, largely to maintain consistency with other vehicular-oriented corridors, allowing for that scale on less pedestrian-friendly thoroughfares, and in other areas, as we've seen, reducing the scale to be more pedestrian-oriented. So that kind of is the rationale behind the increase from 4 to 5, and is the only deviation from the community's indicated preference. Otherwise, the use is consistent, yes.
Would that include parking garages?
The height? In
The use?
yes, but like 5 stories in height for the parking garage.
Mixed use could be parking garages, correct?
It could include parking garages as a
I-
component, yeah.
Got you. Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, sorry I advanced, but I think we answered our one question, so we'll move on. To focus area E, this is the stretch of La Brea just south of downtown, extending all the way to Century. Proposed for the public's consideration was horizontal mixed use, which beat out commercial only by a margin. So consistent with that, the project team's recommendation is horizontal mixed use. And the only deviation in this case, again, is the recommended height. Instead of 3 to 4 stories, stepping up to 5 stories max, again, acknowledging the nature of the corridor, as well as allowing for kind of a bookending of intensities. At the northern end, we do have a node in the downtown, consistent with the TOD plan, and then in that southern extent, where you can kind of see it overlapping with the F3 boundary, at the intersection of Century and La Brea. Again, that's pretty prime real estate. So the only change on this one is from 4 to 5 stories. Hearing nothing and seeing some head nods, I'll move on.
I just want to acknowledge we're a couple minutes before 8. We've got 3 areas left. With your agreement, we just hopefully get to all of them, go a few minutes over. If that's okay with everyone, so we can finish the discussion
We'll
this
just
evening.
hold our comments and let you go.
Yeah, well, yeah, that works. We can return to anything that gets, that you write something down. Okay, so this is actually stretch F3. Please ignore my typo in the header. That's my fault. This is our final stretch of Century from La Brea heading east to Prairie. The alternative presented to the public was vertical mixed use, which obviously was the primary pick, and kind of in line with the other changes we have presented tonight. The recommendation is instead horizontal mixed use, but at the same height and scale as what the public saw and voted on at the open house and through the survey. Any questions, comments, concerns about horizontal here as opposed to vertical?
Give me a second.
Yeah, I saw the gears turning.
Exactly.
So this is
Okay,
also
my
almost.
question is-
Yeah, please.
People have spoken, and we're overturning that.
Well,
I understand why, but the community who we are speaking, we're their voices. They said what they want.
We can't hear you, dear.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the votes here. What was desired, and again, I understand the horizontal use, I get that. But talk to me about this particular place, why we're deviating from the vertical.
horizontal was not presented as an option to the public,
Okay.
so our bad, essentially.
And that's where I was.
Yeah.
If we're presenting, let's not supersede what the request is, no disrespect, because of omissions. If they said that's what they wanted, we're now pretty much saying, oops, we're gonna do this instead. I think this is an area, and Bernard is gonna kill me. There needs to be more discussion on that. If the option is presented to the public
Yeah,
to have that, yes,
so
let's
that's
run
the
it.
discussion we had throughout tonight, that is the discussion, is that horizontal, there is a reason why we're recommending an alternative.
I get it. I, sitting behind this name tag, I 100% get it. But I also understand that my voice is for those that don't have the opportunity to sit in this room. And my responsibility is to come in here and let their voices be heard as well. So if that was not an option that was presented, we are now saying, oops, and I'm not talking, you know we're good, Jonathan.
I'm not.
Oops, but yet, we're changing that.
Yeah.
That was not an option that was presented to the public.
So, do you have a motion to recommend, are you presenting a motion to,
I'm opening the
Recommend
floor for
vertical mixed
discussion
use?
right now. I'm just opening the floor for discussion. Well,
Well,
hearing none.
Jonathan, you made the choice. So why don't you present the discussion?
I think
on
I
why
did.
you did.
I think.
Earlier, yeah.
Okay,
think
well,
it
you did.
I
You
think
did.
the changes,
So you have to have this, your
I'm not,
opposing,
I'm opening the floor for discussion.
but it's been discussed.
If we're all good, it is what it is. But I would like the consistency and the integrity of this committee to be as such. If it wasn't presented to them, don't make the assumption.
That's true.
so I would like
Well,
to.
what can we, how can we correct it?
And that's where I said, I just open it for discussion.
So I think that, you definitely have a valid point. I think what would be interesting, and what kind of one of the things that I was thinking about, just along that corridor stretch is maybe, even if we maintain the horizontal mixed use, that this would be another instance where we would prioritize commercial uses or incentivize those types of uses along that stretch. And I think that's kind of consistent, Jonathan, with the ULI recommendations as well.
The recommendation was mixed use.
It was
Yeah.
mixed use. Okay, but I know that there was a stretch along Century that they prioritized hospitality
Yes.
type of uses. This is it.
Yes.
Right, and so that's kind of what I kind of envision in this area is creating, given its proximity to the sports and entertainment district, that there is maybe an emphasis on commercial indoor hospitality type of uses, and that can be mixed use too, right? You can have retail use at the bottom floor of a hotel, right? And so, I mean, it's commercial by virtue of the use, but you know what I mean. So, but I think that's something that can be spoken to, or that we can think about, but, so I don't know, just something that.
So how do we correct it? Do we accept it as opposed to accept it, or do we ask for it to be presented to another group, or how do we rectify her concern that the options weren't presented to the voters?
She can make the motion, did you make a motion? She can make a motion and we can vote on it, and then that becomes the recommendation.
I don't think we know the answer. That's what she opened it up for discussion.
Well, we've already discussed it, so now we need to make.
So what would you like to do, Krista?
You know our solution?
I'm understanding 100% why we're doing it. I'm okay with the horizontal. I'm just looking at the integrity of the committee.
Understand that. So what we will do as a process, as a part of our process, and this is recorded, so they can go back to it, but it will be explained, the difference, because I think at the time that some of these planned alternatives were done, the Cosmos study had not yet been completed yet. And so our recommendation of what we thought was gonna be the best for that stretch of corridor wound up not being the best from an economic perspective, right? So the reason, so it wasn't a mistake that it was omitted, it was that we didn't have the background knowledge of what was the highest and best.
So Bernard, would an asterisk with and then at the bottom, an explanation of the asterisk basically what you just said, would that resolve the situation?
I think your suggestion is that in presenting it to the planning commission, that is noted as part of what is communicated
That's
to
what
the
the
planning.
asterisk should be,
And that could
an
be-
explanation of the asterisk.
So then that addresses the concern, because
So
it
I
wasn't an
move that-
oversight. It
May I
was-
move that, on that particular issue, we use an asterisk and we provide explanation of the asterisk on that same page.
Sounds good.
And the explanation would be that we only presented one aspect based on technical and professional advice.
Recommendation.
Solution.
Okay, is that, do we need to, if that's a motion?
No,
I don't think it's
we
not
don't have
changing.
a-
It's
We
not
don't have an
changing.
official.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just an agreement. Okay, you got to call for hands.
Okay,
So we asked
great.
basically for a second look at this one.
No, we're just explaining if it becomes obvious to anybody, that they were only presented with one option,
That we knew about it.
why that was done.
Right.
And it was based on, technical and professional advice.
But is our recommendation going to be, this is for K1, right?
No, this is F3.
F3,
Pardon me?
F3.
Foxtrot 3.
Century.
horizontal.
Page 14, Tom.
The header,
I see.
Yeah, I made a goof on
the slide header is mistaken.
it's
but-
called F1, sorry, on the slide,
The purples.
but it is the focus area 3.
Okay.
All right, J, yeah, okay. So now we're looking, this is our second stretch of Manchester, kind of centered on the Crenshaw intersection, stretching east and west a few blocks, a handful of blocks in both directions. Presented to the community was the commercial only and horizontal mixed use alternatives. Commercial only, one narrowly. The recommendation in this instance is mixed use horizontal mixed use at the same scale as voted on by the community, but obviously going with their, in this case, second preference. Again, primarily in acknowledgement that commercial is becoming a less market tolerable use and providing for additional flexibility in this portion of the city. So kind of getting back to our fundamental question.
I think just to add to that, the other reason, in addition to providing more flexibility in terms of future investment and revitalization, is essentially because the state allows housing with conditions in any commercial area, that horizontal mixed use provides an opportunity to more clearly define the type of housing that would be allowed here versus what the state would allow in overriding a commercial zone.
And then I would be remiss if I did not point out the node as well.
I'm going to object to the node. That is going back to the discussions that we had before about preservation areas of preservation. I think that is one of the main thoroughfares to be considered for preservation. Don't mean nothing to nobody else, but I'll put it on record.
So just the node or also the transition?
The transitional area.
For like horizontal mixed use. So your preference would be to maintain it as a commercial?
Commercial only, or at the node, or vertical
Commercial
mixed
at
use?
the node.
Okay, okay.
And
But still allow for mixed use, kind of stemming out from there. Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Well, let's see if there's any
I was just,
questions,
So-
comments. Continue.
In just situational awareness, so there's a proposal right now for, or at the very early beginning stages as a second phase on the Big Lot site to develop for mixed-use development. That would include a new ICOP for District 1. So if we go away from, if we make that commercial only, then that removes.
exclude ICOP.
Well, that would just remove the opportunity to get a new ICOP through the JV, through the JV. So, that's, I mean, it's still at the very early stages, right? Some technical things have to be worked through, but, I think being able to maintain the flexibility at that corner is important, for a multitude of reasons.
Are you saying ICOP or IHOP?
No, COP.
COP.
Okay.
The community center, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, then
I
if
know
that
what
was the
that is,
case,
I just.
I would make the suggestion, lower that height then. Just lower the height then. I would make the suggestion, if we're gonna do multiple, just lower the height.
Oh, from 6 stories to what's consistent to the
Four.
So
4?
just removing the node, basically?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I think I'm comfortable with that.
Do we want
Is that a motion? Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll
Okay.
motion.
So the motion on the floor is to remove the node designation from letter J.
What is a node?
It would allow for a slight, well, 50% increase in intensity. So for the surrounding area, in this case, it's 4 stories. At the node, which would be just, a handful of parcels at the intersection, it would be up to 6.
I second removal of the note.
Okay?
There's a second, do we have a vote?
Yeah.
All in favor, hands up?
Removing?
Removing the node? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
Yep, that sounds good.
I should vote for it.
All right, and now our last one, Kip, you had already beaten us there. We're looking at K, which is 3 sub-areas in one. So a little to discuss, I guess very briefly, the recommendations in terms of height and scale are consistent with the community's preferences. K2, which is kind of that thinner band just south of Century Boulevard, the community's stated preference was commercial only, and the recommendation from the project team is also commercial only. So I just want to, remove K2 from our potential discussion, so we can focus in on any thoughts on K1 and K3. In the K1 area, which is the large cutout that would complete the Hollywood Park specific plan kind of square, the preference by 1 vote was for commercial only. Which again would just be a maintenance of the existing, Home Depot, and I believe there's the Target over there as well. And then in K3, which is south of K2, it directly abuts Morningside High School. It is right now shown in just that lighter blue. The community stated preference was vertical mixed use by a vote of 18 to 17 over commercial only. And the recommendation, again, a deviation from the vertical mixed-use preference to the horizontal mixed-use recommendation, which would provide, in either case, really a transition from more intense uses in the K2 and K1 zones at 4 stories, much more consistent with the existing character of the residential development surrounding the Morningside community. So I think scale, maybe no discussion on, but the potential, for discussion on the uses. If I could provide a little context for K1 specifically, that site is pretty unique. It is the single largest contiguous infill development opportunity, ignoring what is already planned for Hollywood Park specific plan, right? There's already, in the SoFi area, there's quite a bit already planned to go there. So K1 is, I think it's about 42 acres, so pretty substantial, which provides a fairly unique opportunity. Obviously, it is currently developed, but at only about 35% of its potential floor coverage capacity. It is 65% parking lot, so quite a bit could be done there. So the recommendation for horizontal mixed use really is coming out of a vision for taking that and obviously on such a large site, retaining some of that commercial service, regional commercial capacity, but also looking at an opportunity to create a more, residential urban village that brings living, working, recreating into a more internally navigable space. So that's kind of a little bit more on why K1 deviates in this case from just a pure commercial only use. K3, the switch to horizontal, we have beaten to death, so I will not spend any more time discussing that. But I saw, Hervé, you had a hand going up.
I keep beating the dead horse, but I want to know where the 500 houses are, 575 houses.
They are on Morningside, and it is already correctly symbolized in its residential 3 shade of beige brown.
Blue?
It's right here.
It is where it says more, it may be difficult to read.
Tell me where it is, please.
Yeah, it is in that bottom right corner. It's
Those little boxes?
The tan.
a little to the left where it says Morningside High School. Oh yes, Thomas, you are a saint.
Right here.
Thank you.
And that's the 500 houses? Right?
Correct, sir. That is the 500 houses.
Thank you, sir.
So any
Join
questions,
in.
comments on areas K1 or K3?
I don't foresee affordable housing there, because it's similar to the complexes at the corner of Prairie and Hardy on that same Hollywood Park lot, and that's not affordable. But I'm just talking out loud.
If the city were to, yeah, there are other means by which the city could require affordable housing.
Percentage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're spinning on wheels.
We won't, let's save that discussion
Yes.
for next year.
Yeah, okay, so it doesn't sound like, in principle, there's any opposition or concern with the uses as recommended, from a broad perspective,
I'm stuck on K1.
okay?
I am. I'm stuck on K1.
What is,
For
what do you think?
those very reasons. I am foreseeing, okay, speaking very transparent so that you guys can understand my thought. The city of Inglewood is becoming a developer's dream at this point. We are turning over so much because we have it. I get that. However, my contingency is always gonna be to preserve and protect that which is here. Those of us who founded and grounded this. By creating K1 into a horizontal mixed use. I'm thinking of that rendering that you guys gave us way back yonder. I don't forget much. Seeing that is not gonna be beneficial to the city. We have over 500 listings currently in the city of Inglewood of housing that's not built. How do we justify bringing in Hervé's 500 plus,
75.
plus these and still try to maintain affordability in the city? That spells gentrification 100%. And I'm not in agreement with that.
I think what Mr. Grant's report also looked at was a 12% increase of property rate, or property values over a year. I think the conclusion was that there's demand for housing. And so there's supply side and demand side ways to address the crunch. And so by creating capacity for housing, you can increase the supply, which overall drops, in theory, the cost.
In theory.
Yeah, and
But the
unfortunately, we live
reality
in Southern
is-
California, which is
Now
like
let's
the most
do-
high demand place to live.
But let's do the comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, cost of living increasing right now. Somebody in this room let us know that a company didn't want us because we didn't make enough money in this city. If the median income is $65,000 right now in the city of Inglewood, and you are looking right now, typical rent, because I did my research too, typical rent right now for a studio is anywhere from $1,400 to $1,600 today. If we are looking at COLA, cost of living increases, and the proposed pricing that's going to have to match that, we've outpriced ourselves. Period. We've outpriced ourselves. I would much rather, and I preface that with I, would much rather have a situation where I have the availability of commercial as opposed to housing just sitting. We have enough of that. Hollywood, SoFi, whatever that is over there, it's not what it's supposed to be yet. Florence and La Brea, they're not at max. We're building all of this to meet a state mandate, but we are not considering the affordability of it. Talk to me.
Changing its designation is not a guarantee that it comes, right? So even if
Doesn't
it,
mandate housing.
yeah, and it doesn't require that it go there. And I promise developers are not building to satisfy the state. They're building to satisfy themselves. So if the market doesn't tolerate it, they won't build it. So if Hollywood Park stays, 50% leased for the next 3 or 4 years, I think a lot of people are seeing a cool down in housing development elsewhere. If the market's not absorbing it, they will not build it. So
Which becomes a tax write-off at that point. I mean, let's be real, let's look at all viable options.
Yeah.
And I'm open, I
Yeah.
really am, but for that particular, I don't see that serving the discussed purpose.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm gonna say this, that shopping center there, is anchored by Target, Home Depot, the Northgate, not Northgate, El Super, Right Market, all of which have long-term, super long-term leases. Right, and I think, we're talking 10+ years, maybe more, right? So there's not even really, a thought that would change over the course of even this cycle potentially, right? But what happens is by us, again, this creates the opportunity to provide maximum flexibility, right? And the way that we're thinking about, there's a huge parking lot, right, that serves those uses, and so there are a lot of other opportunities that we can use through the redevelopment of some of those surface lots to provide other opportunities. So, I don't think that is gonna change, but creating the opportunity allows for the flexibility from our standpoint.
So-
And again, this is a recommendation.
So where will we state that the city supports affordable housing development? Or, right now, we're just saying you can put 1,000 units here, but we're not saying whether we want to see it at what part of the spectrum.
Right, well,
Is that going to be in a future document as a policy saying the city encourages or supports affordable housing?
We've said that in our housing element.
Okay.
Right, so we've done that work, right, we'll double down in that regard in this next housing element cycle, once we have, as we move forward with the development of policy.
And so where's that
Or
triggered?
goals.
Where's that triggered?
Through our goals, through the goals that we state through this
What are
process.
the mandates?
Right,
Yeah, when will we,
that's the next,
essentially,
well,
you're not gonna say, please, please, please build affordable housing. You're gonna have to mandate it. to some
right,
extent.
well.
Where is it? What triggers
In
it?
the short,
Zoning or?
so in the short term, and I know we're getting late, but the city is moving to, towards adopting an inclusionary, or at least presenting to city council inclusionary zoning within the next 3 months. We're going back to planning commission and city council. So there's gonna be a required affordable set aside. That was an implementation measure of our housing element. So that's what I'm saying, the work has been done, right? It's just a matter of getting to the steps where it's implemented. So we're really close in that regard, right? And the city probably has developed more affordable housing than any city in the South Bay, hands down.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I have other thoughts on that, but that's where we are, and that's where it happened.
I just have a question for Corey and Jonathan. Crystal made a point that the cost of living continues to go up, and then we've got rent at a certain price.
We can't hear you.
We have rent at a certain price. So, if we have a surplus of rental homes or apartments, that drives the price down. Am I correct in saying that?
Generally speaking.
Theoretically, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. Theoretically,
Yeah.
yes, but real life, no. If this is an opportunity zone, as a banker, developers are coming in with free money that comes from all of our pockets here. They're not putting any skin in the game. Second, I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm sorry. Who decides what affordability is?
Thank you.
That's the key. So at this point, going back to Bernard's point, we're coming from this level. We're not there yet, but we need to keep those things in line. What is affordability? Second, we're gonna allow 10% of the apartments to be for low income. Okay, now, are you gonna run the credit on these low income folks? And their credit more than likely will be under 700. You're not gonna have anybody to be able to rent to. I've seen this scam. It is. So here's the thing. the way I see it here is we need to mandate, to kind of piggyback on Kip's point. What is it that we want? Or not necessarily mandate, but kind of steer it that way. This is our opportunity to prepare for what is coming. We've done the trickle-down economics part of it. There is a supply and demand, but there's a demand and supply. There's two schools. Actually, there's three. We can go Keynesian, if you want. We can go Adam Smith, but nobody really understands because they don't read it. They just remember the one little quote, laissez-faire, right? Or the market will take care of itself, the invisible hand. No, you need to read a little bit more into that. And you gotta look at it as an analyst. What drives what we're trying to do here, and how are we gonna set it up? And we need to kind of drive what we want and to prevent that, but we have to ask the questions, even if we don't know the answers. That's the key. And I'm sorry I prolonged it, but I just couldn't help myself.
No worries.
Thank you.
So is there a,
Thank you for sharing.
is there a motion that we're considering for the K1 area?
Yeah, I move that it be, back to what we were talking about, that it be advertised and mandated or put in the record somehow that a certain percentage of all that building be a lower income.
Well, Jorge, that's gonna happen, that's gonna happen way sooner than the adoption of our general plan. That's gonna be codified within this year. So.
But would it be within the period that we have any say? Or would it be at the city council?
Well, I mean,
level?
you can come to the planning commission meeting and provide your feedback when we take it in a couple months, right? So that is an ordinance that's going to the planning commission and gonna go to city
So
council.
why
for them
can't
to
we
adopt.
document?
when is
What's
it
wrong with
required?
documenting it?
What?
When is the affordable housing required?
Well, at the time well, let's talk about that after this, that is not kind of, that's something that
I thought that's
is
what
not a
we-
part of what we're talking about right now.
Well, it is, if we want to say that this huge parcel, really valuable resource, can be a vertical or horizontal mixed use with an emphasis on affordable housing.
Yeah, so, well, the set aside is required at the time that they submit an application for planning approval. So they begin that process of working with our housing division to determine what units they're gonna set aside, and we'll determine a number based on the number of units that are presented through their application. And right now it's 10%. And so we'll, as we begin the program, right, we'll take a look at that, and maybe that number goes up, maybe it goes down. It just depends on kind of where we are and if it becomes an impediment to development, or if it, right? So like, we have to look at all those things too, right? But we're starting at 10%, right? Anything over 10 units or more is gonna require a 10% set aside. And that's kind of where, that's what the inclusionary is intended to do. So by virtue of us building more housing, we're going to get more affordable units, right? And so, and that's kind of where that is.
So it's not based on a discretionary permit, it's anything over a certain
Right,
number.
it's just
will
a certain
have-
number will require, and that's what we're doing.
Will those, like, it's been announced, my 500, will they be announced, will they be retroactively, or, because they're already in the process?
Hollywood Park?
No,
So
well,
there'll be no-
they already are providing affordable units anyway, so they're already requiring 10%.
Thank you. Two quick ones. It's been said to me, people call me with everything, that the Smart and Final lot is gonna end up being apartments.
That hasn't come
Because
about.
everything's closed there except the donut shop and,
Oh, you mean food for less?
yeah, I'm sorry, food for less.
Right, well,
So-
not if
No,
what
it's
we're
closed
doing
on
right
the
now, not if what we're doing right now moves forward, is gonna be commercial. Because right now, we're saying that K2 is commercial only,
Well,
right?
how do we know what is already planned for that lot?
Well, they can't plan anything for that
Right,
lot
right,
if
they
it
haven't
doesn't
gone
come
to
through my department.
And number two, thank you for coming to Century Heights Neighborhood Watch Association's Zoom last month, and we're having another one tomorrow. If any of you would like to be invited, give me your email, and I'll send it to you tomorrow at 6 o'clock, 6:30 to 8. And it's Century
What
Heights.
is it that you offer?
Century Heights Neighborhood Watch Association monthly Zoom meeting. And last month, you had a representative come from the city who came to explain some of this to those that are not here. So I'm inviting you again, if you would like. Give me your email.
Excuse me, Hervé, I just want to, just for the order of the agenda, I think, have you moved into the public comment section of our agenda?
I don't know, I thought we were on the way out.
Well, I think we gotta finish this. Are we, so where do we stand? Our K3, our K1, is there a motion?
I'm going to move that it goes to vertical. Goes to vertical.
Vertical?
K1, vertical
K1,
mixed
vertical
use.
mixed use?
Okay.
Okay, is there a vote to, right
So
now?
that there's two alternatives, vertical mixed use
Or horizontal?
or horizontal mixed use. Vertical is the first alternative. Horizontals that we're gonna vote on, horizontal is the second alternative. So, show of hands for vertical mixed use. Okay. Show of hands for horizontal mixed use. Okay. All right,
Now we're ready for public comment.
okay.
We got through everything?
We're good on, I'm gonna move us on. Okay.
Random question, Hollywood Park, the unopened businesses, is that ghost retail? Or are we anticipating actual open businesses before the, like, what is the time frame? What are we looking at?
We're hoping to get there. There are a few projects that are currently under construction, and some restaurants, and I think there's a bar that recently got planning commission approval. So, you know, not before the World Cup, but definitely before the Olympics.
Work in process.
Right, or, well, and I would even say, I mean, we have World Cup, we have Super Bowl, Olympics, so, you know, everyone's shooting for the Super Bowl for sure. But, you know, like, for example, Raising Cane's, I don't think they're gonna make it, but Raising Cane's is trying to get open before the World Cup, right? So, you know, they're moving like lightning, I think.
Well, you should have left them at Manchester and Berkeley.
Yeah. So,
No, I'm leaving.
yeah.
So
So
is
that-
there anything else good for the order of the business?
Can I just, I'll just remind
Oh, yeah,
everyone
go
quickly
ahead.
where we're headed next
You
steps.
have the show.
As we talked about at the beginning, we're gonna bring this together to a citywide, your recommendations, with the administrative updates, presented to the planning commission, hopefully, May 6th. Feel free to attend and provide your own opinions. We will include a staff report describing our discussions. They will have access to our recording of tonight's meeting, so they'll have the benefit of being able to listen in on your discussions. And our next meeting is scheduled for May 20th. It's the third Wednesday, I believe, in May, 6 p.m. And the intention right now is that that discussion will focus on economic development. So continuation of some of the themes we've been discussing, but more depth on that topic.
Question, good. 2 meetings back, you admonished me about my 2 words, and that there will be a time to discuss it. And when is that?
Yes. So
When will that be?
what we've discussed is that what would be fair to that discussion and to your concerns is that our transportation consultant have an opportunity to do their analysis of the impacts of the land use plan on traffic, and to have that process takes time, that we have a focused meeting on circulation with the benefit of their analysis, so that that discussion can be informed by your, what we've heard are
Have you
your concerns.
contracted
the
that
students'
analysis
concerns.
yet?
That analysis can only begin after the planning commission and city
Second.
council approves
Okay,
the
so we
land
won't
use
be
plan.
discussing.
At meeting 7, at GPAC meeting number 7.
Like,
Okay,
So in 2 sessions.
and when is that?
we don't,
To
we
be-
need to, I think we need to understand how long it's gonna take them to. First, we need to know at what point we have approval for them to start their work. Then we need a timeline for them to conduct their work, and we can hopefully, by our next meeting, we might have a better idea.
So
of when.
possibly it wouldn't be approved and we'll never get an analysis.
You will see it first.
No.
You said they have to be approved.
By the city, as we talked about, the city council and planning commission need to approve moving forward with the environmental analysis on the basis of the land use plan that we've been discussing.
So I don't have to get my chair and sit on 104th and Crenshaw and count cards, right?
I'll bring you.
Well, you can,
We get them a clicker, right?
we can, or they can make a combination.
Citizens are our tax. We live there, and we know what it is now. And with 1,000 more cars a day?
Cars aren't the problem, so this is
Okay,
delivery
if
truck.
there's no further business, we'll call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks.